and welcome back to the 9050 podcast and first episode of 2022, looking around the 905 and seeing what's happening with myself, Roland Tanner.
I am Joel McLeod.
And I hear tell once again of a nasty bug going around, Joel, which has been making the news over the holiday period, and it will surprise no one to hear that we have thoughts. Why didn't you take it away with yours first?
Yeah, I believe it's diagnosed as stupid conservative syndrome, because I think that's how a lot of parents in the 905 are taking it as. This is what, lockdown 4 now? Am I lost track? Lockdown number 4, I guess. Mm-hmm. But I'm a parent of 2 elementary school kids in Halton, and yeah, they're at home with myself and my wife, and we're hunkered down for yet another winter round of stay at home and avoid the pandemic. I want to say that I'm surprised by this, and I'm really fed up. I am, and I'm not. It's kind of what I expected from this government to just kind of let the ball drop. I mean, we knew that Omicron was coming through, and it was going to be a big deal. But we knew that as far back as November. And I remember even before the Christmas break, parents were asking themselves around, like, what's going to happen? This seems to be a big deal. What precautions are we going to take? And of course, nothing happened. And we got sent home 2 boxes each of rapid tests. And I remember, if you remember, that was the rapid test free for all, and that seemed to be it for the plan. The Wild West free market capitalists. Let's build up a demand of unimaginable proportions and then cut off supply completely to the market for rapid tests. And that was the plan. That was the big COVID protocol for the Ford government until we came back in the new year, and then it gave us 2 days head notice. Hey, we're going to pause the return to school, and then the day came, and they said, no, you know what? We're actually just going to stay at home virtual schooling for 2 weeks. Again, I want to say I was surprised by this. I'm not. I'm frustrated because I don't think we had to be here. I think this could have been avoided because, let's face it. I mean, if I wanted to, I could take my kids out of virtual school. I could take them with me. We could do a tour of every mall in the 905. I could start them off in Square One, and we could just do laps around that mall all day long, then take them in the car and drive down to Dixie Valley Mall and do that again, and then do Mapleview Mall, and I could do all the shops I want to with my kids. I could take them in and out of every shop I wanted to in those malls, but I cannot send them to school in their classrooms, because apparently that's not safe enough. But Lord knows, if I want to go to the Apple store, oh my God, thank God that's a priority.
Yeah, I mean, my take on things increasingly is just utter confusion, and I like to fool myself, persuade myself that I'm not a complete idiot. Others may disagree, but I kind of think that if someone like me who follows the news, who tries to understand it rather than just listen to it, hasn't got a clue what's really going on anymore and why it's going on, why the decisions are being made, then that says a lot. I mean, and to an extent, this is beyond an Ontario problem. This seems to be kind of a global problem. But then again, I have family dotted around the world, and in 2 different countries, 3 depending how you count it, and they have vastly different experiences of COVID because of the ways their government's approaching it. Now, I'm certainly not holding up the UK as an example of anything with Boris Johnson's attitude, but they have had until now, and I've now heard that the government's trying to cut back on it, basically had stockpiles of, every family has rapid tests. Now, has that stopped the spread? Clearly not, because Britain's full of Omicron. Then again, I have a sister who lives in Malaysia, where the government is far, far stricter about what you can do and can't do, given your vaccination status, than anything in North America. They don't really have Omicron yet. Which tells its own story that, they've been extremely strict about who can come in and who can go out. And they've been extremely strict about where you can go if you don't have a vaccination. And as a result, in a country that it's not necessarily considered in the West to be at the forefront of every technology, although obviously the Far East is very technologically up and organized and everything. But hopefully people know what I mean. They're doing a better job at controlling this than us, but it comes with a degree of loss of freedom in that the government just is not taking any prisoners.
But here's the thing: here in Ontario, I don't think we don't even need to go that far. We had the tools with our vaccines. We were. If I wanted our listeners to kind of flash back to early fall, I'm going to say fall or late summer. The Ford government stood up and said, "Oh no, we're going to, start in the new year. We're going to pretty much just reopen everything up. Forget the vaccine passports. Forget the vaccine mandates for businesses, et cetera. We're just going to reopen everything. And by March, we're going to be, this thing will be a distant memory." And that's clearly not the way things were working out. This is not how COVID doesn't care about our plans, our timetables, or our agenda. And that's the thing that I get from this, is that this government, and I think conservative governments, because I know it's the same thing kind of out in Alberta and Saskatchewan, conservative-minded governments are wanting to wish this away, or trying to get back to 2019 as quickly as possible. It's like let's just forget this ever happened. Let's forget these 2 years, and we'll just wish it away, and let's blame the Liberals or whomever, the unions or whomever's in the way. I don't think that's going to happen. The more and more we deal with this, the more I get the sense of we're going to get more of these variants. There'll be a theta variant or a zeta variant. Something else will come down the road.
We're going to need a bigger alphabet.
And that's the thing. We're going to start reusing some of the Greek letters there. But that's my point. Is that we're going to keep getting these things for I'm going to say the foreseeable future. I don't see an end date for this thing.
The depressing news out of the UK that I read yesterday was that the government over there is cutting back on the free rapid tests that everybody's had up to now. I wish, to be fair to the British government, which I rarely am, even if they cut back, they'll have a hell of a lot more than we do here. However, but the more depressing thing is that they're looking forward to the next 6 years of variants of COVID. The next 6 years now, that doesn't make you.
That's what we need. We need to kind of wrap our heads around. Is that what if this lifestyle goes on for the next 6 years? What if Omicron will come and pass, but to say, okay, that's it, we're done, COVID's over, we're everybody open everything back up, let's get back at it. We have to be realistic about this.
Well, it's not.
Our leaders have to be realistic. Our leaders have to face facts. There'll be another variant down the road. Will it be deadlier than Omicron? I hope not. I really do. But it might. And that's the thing. We don't know what's down the road. COVID's clearly not done with us. We need to stop reacting like, okay, we beat it this time. All right, everybody, woohoo, 2019, here we come. It's not happening. Get it through our heads. Doug Ford and Stephen Lecce and Christine Elliott need to get it through their heads. It's not changing. Start planning for how does an economy work with that? And I think a big thing is, you say to go into anything, go into a business, to go to do work, do any of that stuff. You need to be vaccinated. Talk to the insurance companies and get the insurance company to say, start charging premiums for unvaccinated workers. The tune will change real quickly. Because quite frankly, that's the problem, is the people who are right now in the ICUs, who are taking up hospital beds and really clogging up our healthcare system, are the unvaccinated. Look at any epidemiologist, any report coming out of our system, and you'll see it's the unvaccinated in the ICUs that are causing our healthcare system to border on the verge of collapse. That's not acceptable, especially when right now it's their personal irresponsibility, in my opinion.
It's difficult how to disagree with that. I mean, it just and their responsibility, which is keeping the rest of us locked down again. I mean, is Omicron going to spread anyway? Yeah, I mean, clearly, I know plenty of people now who've had COVID who were vaccinated. And I think it's getting to the point now where most of us know someone who's had COVID, or multiple people who've had COVID. Fact is, I've been stuck indoors for most of the last 3 weeks, even though I've had every vaccination going, because it's like, well, what else am I going to do? And it seems to me that last year it is possible to have a relatively normal life if with fairly minor restrictions, if you act ahead of the curve rather than behind it all the time. Mm-hmm. So from last spring to November, speaking personally, I was pretty much living my life like I did pre-COVID. Just put on a mask when you go into a shop. I could have gone to a gym. I didn't because I'm lazy, but I could have done. I went to restaurants, all these things. I never caught anything. Nobody I was with ever caught anything. We weren't spreading. We were responsible. We were living pretty much like we always did. Now, because of the failure of guts, which is the constant failure of this provincial government, is its gutlessness, here we are again. And, it's like, it ain't going back to normal. There is no end in sight. But that can be fine if, when these new variants come along, we act quickly rather than letting it wait 2 weeks while everybody goes off on their Christmas vacation. It seems to have happened with
I just don't understand. I don't understand why they always do this. Let's wait and see. Like maybe this one. Like, oh, this one is going to pass us by. Like it never happens. Why is it that you're acting like, oh, maybe this one's not going to be as bad as all the scientists and all the epidemiologists predict it will be? When have they ever been wrong? When have they ever dropped the ball or said, oh yeah, we didn't do the math on that one, guys? Every single time the WHO, the epidemiologists, the COVID science team always comes out and says, yeah, it looks like this wave's going to be a bad one. We should start enacting plans now. And this government says, oh, well, let's take it under advisement. And they all go behind closed doors and not do Lord knows what. And then come back 2 months after the fact, say, you know what, we're going to have to shut down the schools. But the malls are still open. And, oh, yeah, I guess, we can still have hockey games and basketball games and all that stuff. That can go on. But we'll lock down the schools because we don't know what else to do. And I'll be honest, I know we're saying that has to change. I don't see it changing because I don't think you're right. This government doesn't have a courageous bone in its body. It is completely in the wind. Oh, and we're suffering for it.
Let's face it, there's a far higher... I'm not saying clearly the Premier is not an anti-vaxxer. I'm not saying he is. I'm not saying that any of the ministers are anti-vaxxers, or certainly not the health minister. But there is a higher proportion of anti-vaxxers in that caucus than probably in any of the other caucuses. So, in those meetings, that Ford is under pressure from some of the crazier kind of ideas that are out there. And it's the man who just kind of blows in the intellectual wind, so to speak, according to the last person who spoke to him. And I think I can't believe is that the kind of story of Doug Ford's indecisiveness, his weakness, his vacillation, his ineptitude doesn't come through better through the general media. That this is a weak premier who doesn't really have a clue, who is enormously reactive to whatever happens rather than trying to think ahead, which is, with everything we knew about Doug Ford before 2018, would have been exactly what we kind of predicted. This guy's not the sharpest tool in the drawer. But it frustrates me that the media isn't leading with headlines with flip-flop from Doug Ford every day of the week, rather than the Premier says, well, who cares what the Premier says? It's just an insult at this point. Anyway, let's not rage for a full half an hour.
Why don't we take a break for a word from our sponsor, and then we will be back. And we're back. I hope you didn't miss us too badly. So, Roland, this past weekend, you got up to a little bit of ranting on Twitter. You took a break from the podcast and you started a rant on Twitter about lawn signs in Hamilton, which normally I'd be like, who the hell cares about lawn signs? But this one actually is kind of interesting.
It interested me. Well, there's the actual issue of the signs, and then there's what this story just typifies in local government, which is the kind of $1 million question in my mind. So, to give you the background, about midday Friday, an announcement went out and a tweet went out from the city saying, there are proposals for some changes to the political signage bylaws that will come into effect this year during the municipal election. Click here to find out more. And for a laugh, for fun, as I said sarcastically, I clicked on the link. And then I clicked another link and another link and another link and a few more links. And I downloaded a file and I opened the file and I scrolled through the first 7 or 8 pages. And I finally found, after all that, what was actually being proposed. Because, the city makes an announcement saying we're proposing changes, and then makes it incredibly difficult for the public to find out what those actual changes are. And I don't really have a whole lot of patience. I certainly don't have much patience to click that many things and to wade through 10 pages of City Hall jargon, which everything that comes to council is written in this kind of verbose language that uses 1,000 words where you could use 10. And I understand why that is. It's because every document needs to kind of include the history of how we got to this point. So every document refers to every other document, blah, blah, blah. But the ultimate point was, there's no point saying, find out more when it's actually impossible to find out more. And I think city halls across Ontario, I think Hamilton's a particularly bad example, but it's certainly not unique to them, do this pretty much deliberately as a way of discouraging public comment. The other way they discourage public comment is by tweeting something like that out at 12:30 on a Friday before a weekend, and saying, if you'd like to comment and provide written comments, we only accept them by mail. And by the way, the deadline is midday on Monday. So you've got, basically, Ontario's Post does not work that fast.
Even in the best of times, Canada Post will not move. You will not get your mail there. But here, okay, so what was the city of Hamilton's big change that required all this hubbubaloo?
Yeah, the actual changes didn't interest me that much, and I'm not earth-shattering. Joey Coleman did a much better analysis than I did, and I encourage everybody to go over to thepublicrecord.ca. You can check out the article, and in essence, that they are, a few years ago, they amalgamated the bylaws that control election signs with the bylaws that control other kinds of signage in the city, like advertising and blah, blah, blah. So having amalgamated, they've now decided that it was better how it was the first way. So they're going to separate it out again into separate bylaws. So that's part one. It's just the city undoing what it did. And the other part was things like saying you can't have a lawn sign if you live within 100 meters of a polling place, which that reflects the kind of long-standing principle that it's better not to have too much political signage going on at the place where people are going to vote. However, it's also, as Joey pointed out, kind of, you can't actually do that. You can't tell people, it infringes on the kind of Charter of Rights and Freedoms to say you cannot have a political opinion or make a political statement on your own land. Like, lawn signs are actually specifically protected under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. However much many political volunteers may loathe those signs, and I was certainly one of those people. I think you were too. They're actually protected. So, in theory, the city can fine someone, was it $50 or $100 every time someone has a sign?
Well, it depends. It was possibly $200 if you were within 100 meters of any voting place or an advanced voting place. That's, yeah, are you going to have somebody with a tape measure also, like, where could you technically do it? Would it be like the voting place be like the gymnasium of a school, in which case you have to go like from that gymnasium, or is it just the property itself? So could it be the driveway of said school, or would it have to be the front door? Like, it's these are things that you say, well, this doesn't matter, but it kind of does, because if you're just within or just outside that boundary, it doesn't matter. What I thought was interesting about this bylaw was the trying to say what constituted an election sign, right? So what they want to incorporate here is like the city clerk can order the removal of signs influencing electors to vote for or against an issue associated with a candidate, election, or a political party, which is basically like, if you're driving around town and you see like the Stop Sprawl Hammond signs, or you might say, save our city, or, or stop the Stop Sprawl, whatever the case may be, those aren't directed towards a specific candidate or a group of candidates. It's just that person at that house or apartment says, this issue is important for me. This is how I'm voting along my lines. If you want to earn my vote, this is the issue that matters most to me. And they hope that you feel likewise. I think it's very interesting in this municipal election. This is me with my tinfoil hat on. So take it as you will. That the city council decided to pass this kind, because I suspect this municipal election in Hamilton, there will be a lot of similar signs of people saying, I'm not going to support a particular candidate, but I am going to make it notice that I want, say, change in my government. I want change at my municipal government. I want to curb the sprawl into the White Belt, or I want to clean up Coots Paradise down by the RBG. These things, I suspect you might see some signs like this popping up. I don't know what. And what I'm just saying is, like, I think there are a number of councillors that, this will be a thorn in their side. These issues are things that they have taken clear stances on, that people are not happy with their position on these issues, or lack of position on these issues, and it's something that it draws a negative light to them.
And I mean, if you want to be like you say, if you want to put on the tinfoil hat, you could say, well, this could specifically be aimed at the I elect Hamilton people, who are basically saying it's time for a change, and who are organising, a pretty vociferous campaign that isn't supporting anybody or opposing anybody, but is saying it's time for a change. Now, we saw in Burlington in 2018, City Hall getting extremely defensive about citizen groups that were basically also saying time for a change, accusing those groups of being biased and all kinds of things, and kind of doing all they could to obstruct those organizations, which staff have no business obstructing. You may not agree with them, you may not like them, but they have a perfect right to do what they're doing, because, hey, that's democracy. And now, I'm not sure if these changes have been deliberately considered under that kind of thing of taking people like I elect Hamilton out of the game, because boy, are lawn signs probably the most effective tool you have at spreading the word about things. I don't know, but it could be. And I think even if it isn't, it could be interpreted that way by a subsequent person. So the rules are not being written properly to, as Joey says, much more coherently than I am right now, it's too vague. And in their vagueness is where everything can go wrong, because things you're not anticipating get included. And there's a whole mess now in Ontario as a whole, actually, about the whole third-party advertising situation. People were kind of complaining a while back about the changes that Doug Ford was making to third-party advertising rules. And I was actually kind of alone saying, you know what, this isn't the worst thing, because everybody's saying, well, this is his attack on the unions. And I was like, yeah, but it also takes out the Ontario Proud people.
Right.
Because that has been a way in which, and I don't actually particularly like the kind of union advertising that goes on at elections either. I think it's shitty and it's negative, and we'd be fine without it. However, I also have to accept that just because I don't like something doesn't mean it shouldn't exist, and that political expression we have to default towards letting people speak side of things. I hate political signs during campaigns, and this coming from a guy who ran a few campaigns of his own. I hate them with a passion, most because I think they're ugly. You don't really notice them until you drive down a street and you see a bunch of them on people's lawns, and then you kind of get the idea, okay, you're for or against something, or you want somebody to be elected to office. I got that. But after a while, you look at them and say, no, they're just ugly. And they're a bit of an environmental disaster that you can't recycle them.
You can't recycle them. They end up sitting in landfills. It's such waste. Not to mention, I don't think that they do as good a job as people say. And I would argue in the last federal election here in Burlington, you and I both remarked at how rampant we saw Emily Brown, the Conservative candidate, signs around town. And we were just said, wow, who is this person? Like she has a ton of support in this town. The incumbent Karina Gould is going to be turf because look at all the Emily Brown signs. They're everywhere. Turns out, no, Karina Gould won a handy majority of votes. It wasn't even contestable. She clearly won. It wasn't close. Thank you. And Karina Gould walked away with another term as Burlington's MP. So I look at it and say, clearly the idea, we need all these signs because we're going to blanket the city in lawn signs. We're going to prove everybody's on our side or not on our side. It doesn't work. At the same time, I respect, yes, you and I and everyone else has a chartered right to express our political ideas and free will and concepts and all that. And we're allowed to put up signs on our lawns if we so wish. That's the cold hard reality that every political operative has to accept.
Well, what I find a really valuable point that Dave Meslin made about this, and again, we've been talking about basically how government can go through the motions of openness and accessibility at the exact same time as they're actually making it almost impossible for you to follow what they're doing. Mm-hmm. The only reason we really know about this stuff in Hamilton, why so often Hamilton we talk about, is because Joey Coleman is doing the digging. If that isn't a bad pun with a Coleman as a name, I don't know. Every city needs a Joey Coleman. We need to clone him and send him to Mississauga and Brampton and and Burlington. Although we do slightly better there. And unfortunately, the conventional media used to do this, and they don't do it anymore. So this stuff is happening everywhere. This is how municipal government operates, how staff operate, usually independently of council. We're not criticizing councillors here. We're criticizing the way staff protect their turf, for want of a better word, and lawn signs exist because there are so few ways for politicians to reach the public. Dave Meslin suggested it's like, why don't we just the public purse, whatever, should pay for a brochure that goes out that has all the candidates in it, that gives the candidates some space to actually talk and expound upon their points of view. Every house should get that. Every voter should get that automatically. No need for knocking on doors. No need for lawn signs. The information that lets people make an educated decision would be delivered to them. Now, you can say, well, they always exist. There are websites. There are all these things. Well, sure. But you don't go to... This stuff has to be taken to the person and made as accessible as possible, rather than ask the person to go to... it's like City Hall, when talking about municipal elections, City Hall should go to the voter. Don't ever expect the voter to go to City Hall. That's not the way it actually works. If you're running a store or a business, you inherently understand that kind of mentality, but municipalities don't understand that. And it's like, they're apathetic because they don't vote. Well, why should they vote when they don't know who the hell is running? And the only reason I, as a candidate, wanted as many lawn signs as possible, because if I don't have lawn signs, no one's going to know my name. So basically, have the loudest lawn sign you can get your hands on, because that's all most people are going to know. Oh, it's the guy with the lawn signs. One final topic, Joel, you picked up on.
Yes.
It's HCDSB again.
New year, new kick at the can, I suppose. So as longtime listeners of this podcast who will remember, we've kept our eye on the Catholic School Board in Halton. Mostly at the start of, in June of last year, they tried to pass a motion to raise the pride flag at every school in the board. It was soundly defeated, and well, I'm going to say just miserable time, because I've never seen such a contentious board kind of devolve into this kind of bickering and just really ugly nastiness, and over the idea of just raising a
I was just saying, even the motion wasn't so much defeated because it never got as far as a vote, as it was sort of taken out back and beaten to a pulp
right.
of kind of procedural messing.
Yes.
So but yeah,
that happened. But the trustee who brought it forward the last time, Brenda Agnew, is bringing it forward again in an upcoming board meeting slated for this month in January. They are going to attempt to yet again allow the pride flag to be flown at schools in the Halton Catholic School Board. Will they succeed this time? Who knows? I do know this though. LifeSite News, the Coalition Life Canada, as well as a number of other right-wing organizations are now actively campaigning against this motion. They are very mobilized. They are getting their people to write in. They're getting their people to petition the school board and to delegate at the school board meeting. However, the change this time is Halton Parents for Change is there to be a more organized voice this time. They are also advocating for their colleagues, their allies in the board to do the same. I'm curious to see how this meeting turns out. I really am. I'm curious to see how this will go out. Your thoughts? You another kick of the can for
my
LGBTQ rights.
My thoughts are good for Brenda Agnew. I mean, this is sooner or later this vote is going to pass. Whether it's this year, next year, the year after, soon. To quote Humphrey Bogart, there will be pride flags flying over the Catholic school board schools in Halton. My thoughts are that real politicians know when to give up, when they've lost, when the jig is up, and when, even if they do believe in something, it's better to let it go than to continue to fight it. I mean, that sounds like a real kind of political hack thing to say, but my advice to the various trustees who might be wavering on this, and some of them clearly are never going to waver, but some of them might, is if you vote yes, this issue goes away. If you continue to vote no, this just becomes a bigger and bigger and bigger noose around the neck of Halton Catholic School Board, and indeed the future of Catholic schools across Ontario as separate entities. Because each time this issue comes up, people start to ask, why the hell do we have these schools? Why do we let this happen?
Yeah.
So that's my advice to the people who voted no last time. Have a bit of political sense.
I would hope so. What gets me is I mean, in all transparency, I have children in the Catholic board. I myself am a graduate of the board, and I even volunteered in that board. So I guess I do have a vested interest, but you and I I think, are two progressive guys. We were very much in favor of LGBTQ plus equality and rights. This was an issue that we blatantly said, oh, it's such a simple, small thing, but such a powerful thing to students who are questioning and coming into their own in this formative period in their life. And just a little help that says, you know what, if you discover that you are on that spectrum somewhere, you have a welcome place in this school environment, because you might not have one at home. That's the unfortunate reality that we have to live in, and the number of what got me is the number of students and teachers and parents who are actually in that school system who were, I'm going to say, borderline militant of, no, we want to send a message. You are accepted here and you are welcomed here. What gets me is how it just kind of showed how out of step the board was with its own constituency. So I'm hoping that this is an opportunity to kind of maybe rewrite a wrong, to correct a misstep in the past, and hopefully the board gets back on track and can focus on more sane things. Well, put this ugly chapter behind them.
A school board should be in the headlines about as often as the police services board is, i.e. never, or almost very close to never in most regions, or any of the other boards that exist. For some reason we elect school boards in Ontario. That's fine. The disadvantage of that is it attracts people who have egos or axes to grind or whatever. And again, because of the terrible communication that candidates, it's really difficult. It's really difficult to reach the voters if you're running for the school board, because you have huge territory you have to cover. It's really tough. Most people stick a pin in the list, and the more they just keep on hammering away at this stuff, the more we're just going to question, why on earth do we have this system? And frankly, I'm happy to keep on questioning it. I mean, not the pride issue. Those flags should be flying right away. But I'm happy to keep questioning why we have elected school boards, because they are farcical in far too many cases. I mean, beyond farcical. We need to really question why something that we've inherited from history is still the case in 2022.
Good point. And why don't we leave it at that for our listeners? Well, this is it for our first episode back for 2022. Hopefully many more to come in the year. And thanks for listening, everyone, and take care. Bye-bye. That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns, or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We'd love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.
Looking to make the most out of this life and optimize your personal wellness? Then check out the Natural Man Podcast. Join me, host Mike C., as we explore all areas of human wellness, physical, mental, and emotional. Learn strategies to optimize your own well-being and be in the driver's seat of your own health. Remember, your doctor works for you. Learn biohacks, neurohacks, ways to improve sleep, and ways to optimize your body and your mind. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, the Fountain app, and at naturalmanpodcast.com.